Good day, gentlemen. Dirk here with the MGTOW solution. You can learn a lot from a Google search, and just out of curiosity, I ran 2 searches. One for organizations for women, and one for organizations for men, just to see what would come up. Here's what I got. Under organizations for women, we got 166 million results. I'm only going to cover the top 5 on each of these, and here's the top 5 for organizations for women. 1. 19 women's organizations you need to know. Diversity best practices. This one included the League of Women Voters, American Association of University Women, the National Association for Female Executives, the National Council of Jewish Women, the National Council of Negro Women, the National Latina Business Women Association, Asian Women in Business, NOW, or the National Organization for Women, and Women Impacting Public Policy. Result number 2 was the National Organization for Women. And they list 5 campaigns. Those campaigns are 1. End the criminalization of trauma. 2. Ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. 3. Mobilize for reproductive justice. 4. Advance voting rights. And 5. Protect immigrant rights. Since NOW is one of the largest and most well-known, let's look at each of their 5 campaigns. End trauma. Women and girls are affected by sexual violence at an alarmingly high rate in the U.S. This violence is ignored on a cultural and institutional level. Men in power are not held accountable for their actions, while millions of women are forced to suffer in silence. Moreover, women who are victims of violence are often criminalized and incarcerated for behaviors stemming from their abuse. NOW is committed to ending violence of all forms against women. Through legislative advocacy on a state and federal level, uplifting protections of women across all sectors, and providing resources for women to address the psychological and emotional trauma stemming from violence, we aim to eradicate a culture that has deemed it normal to prey on women. Under the Equal Rights Amendment, they state, women are still not guaranteed equal rights under the U.S. Constitution. Regarding reproductive justice, they basically put out a boilerplate pro-abortion statement. As for voting rights, the NOW site states, over the past 5 years, voter suppression has manifested itself in a variety of ways, including racial and partisan gerrymandering, discriminatory voter ID laws, and the disenfranchisement of millions of voters. So apparently they don't believe in proof of eligibility to vote. Regarding immigrants, here's their statement. Across the country, the rights of immigrants are severely compromised due to the cruel tactics of the Trump administration. Most importantly, we are committed to raising awareness about the unique abuses suffered by immigrant women in the political, economic, labor, and social spheres. I'm not sure what unique abuses suffered by immigrant women they're referring to, but this is classic women as victims narrative. Okay, the third result was 9 powerful professional organizations for women. This just includes a variety of business-oriented organizations for women. Number 4 was List of Women's Organizations by Wikipedia. That one includes 53 international organizations and 90 organizations in the U.S. Number 5 was 8 women's rights organizations everyone should know about. These include Ultraviolet, to fight sexism, NOW, which we already know about, the ACLU, which we know about, Planned Parenthood, and we know where they stand, An organization called RAIN, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, Campaign Zero to End Police Violence in America, the Sylvia Rivera Law Project, which claims to work to guarantee that all people are free to self-determine gender identity and expression, regardless of income or race, and without facing harassment, discrimination, or violence. The Women's Prison Association, which works with women at all stages of criminal justice involvement. We promote alternatives to incarceration and help women living in the community to avoid arrest or incarceration by making positive changes in their lives. So there's your top 5 Google hits for organizations for women. Moving on to organizations for men, we have 19,600,000 results. Number 1, Men's Organizations Wikipedia. This is just an alphabetical list of men's organizations, including the Good Men Project and Men Against Rape and Discrimination. The Good Men Project features articles like Being a Stay-at-Home Dad Without Losing Your Masculinity, Why I Married a Feminist, and Don't Man Up, Open Up. Looks to me like a How to Be a Simp website. Number 2, Top 10 Fraternal Organizations at AskMen.com. This is just a list of male-oriented organizations, including the Air Force and Coast Guard Auxiliary, the Loyal Order of Moose, and the Freemasons at number 1. The third result is National Organization for Men at menstuff.org. This one lists 28 organizations, including the Outreach Institute of Gender Studies, the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, and the Society Against False Accusations of Rape. So it's a pretty diverse mix. Number 4 was the National Organization of Men Against Sexism. This one has come up before. Here's their purpose. Quote, the National Organization for Men Against Sexism is an activist organization of men and women supporting positive changes for men. NOMAS advocates a perspective that is pro-feminist, gay affirmative, anti-racist, dedicated to enhancing men's lives, and committed to justice on a broad range of social issues, including class, age, religion, and physical abilities. End quote. It's like an educational site for manginas. Number 5 is mankindproject.org. Here's their statement. Quote, we believe that emotionally mature, powerful, compassionate, and purpose-driven men will help heal some of our society's deepest wounds. We support the powerful brilliance of men, and we are willing to look at and take full responsibility for the pain we are also capable of creating and suffering. We care deeply about men, our families, communities, and the planet. End quote. The way I see this one, men are supposed to just take responsibility for everything and man up. So there are about 8 times as many search results for women's organizations as there are for men. And it appears that women's organizations are more political, while men's organizations lean more social, though some are actually dedicated to feminist causes and growing the gynocracy. And all this begs the question, why is there so much more activism for women than there is for men? Probably 1,000 reasons, but allow me to present just one possibility. Maybe it's because men are generally too busy working, while women generally have far more free time to complain about how hard their lives are and to get involved in feminist causes. At any rate, it's clear that feminists are a powerful group, as demonstrated by the following article from Hot Air on 20 February 2018. The article is titled, Marines Quietly Lower Combat Training Standards to Help Female Officers. Quote, "Those of you who were following the efforts of then SecDef Ash Carter to open up all combat roles to women during the Obama administration probably recall some of his comments at the time. In 2015, when the U.S. Marine Corps was told to integrate women into combat duty, Carter was very clear in stating that standards would not be lowered and the women would have to compete on even footing with the men. He said, 'There will be no exceptions,' at a news conference. He added, 'They'll be allowed to drive tanks, fire mortars, and lead infantry soldiers into combat. They'll be able to serve as Army Rangers and Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Marine Corps infantry, Air Force parajumpers, and everything else that was previously open only to men.'" The Defense Secretary sought to assuage those concerns on Thursday by saying that every service member would have to meet the standards of the jobs they wish to fill, and there must be no quotas or perception thereof. Unfortunately, one of the requirements to become a Marine combat officer is to pass the combat endurance test. One Marine I know who lived through the experience simply described it as hell. Many of the details are not made available to the public at large, but the majority of men who attempt the feat fail. The number of women who pass the course can apparently be counted on one hand. But now you won't necessarily have to pass it. A few months ago, the Marines quietly changed the requirement so that it was only one of a number of factors being considered for graduating the infantry officer course. The U.S. Marine Corps will no longer require prospective officers to pass a punishing combat endurance test to graduate from the service's infantry officer course. That was from the Washington Free Beacon. Marine Corps Commandant General Robert Neller quietly made the shift to standards in November, altering the test from a pass-fail requirement to just one of many exercises measured as part of overall IOC evaluation. The Marine Corps Times first reported on Thursday. The course is considered among the military's toughest training programs, with about a quarter of all students failing to complete it, according to the Washington Post. Most of the 30-plus women who have attempted IOC dropped on the first day during the combat endurance test. Of course, the Marines are claiming that they absolutely didn't make this change to help more women make it through IOC. They cite multiple modifications made to the course over the past 4 decades, each designed to adapt to changing requirements. But that answer rings a little hollow when you consider that only one woman has made it all the way through the full IOC since then. The few details known about the training regimen are daunting. Applicants are tossed out on a forced march in the dark of night, carrying 80 to 100 pounds of gear on their backs. They have to carry that gear and hold their rifles over their heads while treading water, scaling walls, completing an obstacle course, and other tasks. They're also taken by surprise in simulated enemy ambush situations and judged on how they respond to pain in realistic combat scenarios. Obviously, the number of women who are capable of all that is vanishingly small in the general population. Heck, the number of men who can manage it is no doubt far below 1%. Why do you think we call them the few and the proud? But the fact is, there were a few women completing the CET. In the first year of trials, 3 women made it through, though they didn't finish the entire IOC. And wasn't that always the expectation? We supposedly weren't guaranteeing any particular number of women roles as combat officers in the Marine Corps. We were just giving them the opportunity to try and prove they have what it takes. But now, some aspiring officers, presumably of both genders, who fail to complete the CET will still make it through and lead Marines into combat. You can say that you're not lowering the standards until you're blue in the face, but it sure looks that way from the outside. End quote. There's a reason the Marine Corps has a reputation as one of the premier fighting forces on the planet. They have high standards. Unfortunately, those standards are apparently being compromised to accommodate women. This is disturbing, but isn't all that surprising. It demonstrates the ability of feminist ideology to infiltrate every corner of society. When you're trying to force square pegs into round holes, you have three choices. 1. Set a standard that must be met and enforce the standard, which is the most logical approach. 2. Create a double standard, as we have for men and women throughout most of the military. Or 3. Lower the standards. Unfortunately, it looks like the decision was made to go with option 3 in this case. And this isn't just a bad idea, it's a dangerous one. Our Marines deserve better. And so the feminist onslaught continues, aided by whatever men cave into their demands. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but men need to be aware that even our most revered institutions are being adversely affected by the feminist agenda, which is why we need masculism, and why we need to demand equal standards and equal responsibilities. MGTOW, of all people, probably understand this better than anyone. Have a great day, gentlemen.